Go ahead. The time is now yours for the lesson that you wanted to give us.
We thought that it would be kind of nice to just talk a little bit about our youth and some of the things that we remember about our childhood. And tonight we would like to have me tell one of the stories that I grew up with.
Can I add something to this? I can't remember how we got onto the horses. Do you remember that?
Yes, I was reading a story. I was writing down, reading some of the things of my life, and I was talking about my horse that I had on the dry farm. And that triggered a lot of thoughts, and it came in sequence, you know. And so I thought that I would start out by saying when I was a young boy, I used to stop by the library on the way home from school and pick up stories to read. But Mother and Dad bought me a book called The Little Shepard of Kingdom Come. And I don't remember whether they bought it or whether it was a hand-me-down. But
let me tell you what it says in front. It says Dean Packer, 1927, age 11.
And so I was, and when I thought of the horse's name, let me tell you how I got the horse. One winter, in the wintertime in Rexburg, they had a long main street, and they would have horse races in the wintertime, and they had what they called cutter races, and that's a little sleigh and the two horses were pulling the sleigh. It was just a very light sleigh. So and the man who drove the horses rode in the sleigh. Have you ever seen a cutter?
Mm-hmm.
And you kids, you know what a cutter is then? It's a little tiny, with a little thin runner, and it was just very light. And he sat in the cutter. In fact, he knelt behind the front of the cutter, kind of like a chariot.
Yeah.
And instead of having wheels, it had
runners
to go in snow. And I wasn't watching this race, but my dad told me that he had bought a horse. And I said, and then I said, how did you get it? And he said, well, I was down at the races today, and they had a wreck. One of the teams got frightened and ran off the road and ran into a car. And some way or another, a metal rod, got run through the thigh of one of the horses. And they were going to take the horse out and shoot it. And that it was a racehorse, very trim and neat and fast. And Dad said, well, don't shoot it, let me have her, and I'll take care of her. And he said, well, they'll never be able to run. She'll never be able to run in the races again. He said, I know, but he had something in his mind. And so when he said, I've got this horse and she's been hurt. And when she heals up, why, I'm going to let you have her. And so I don't remember the healing process. All I remember was that I rode her for years, and she could run as fast as the wind. And I had to get kind of used to her because I hadn't been riding horses like that. I'd been riding old work horses and stuff on the dry farm.
Yeah.
But
Not race horses.
But not race horses.
I thought it would be fun for the kids to know that Grandpa was 10 and 11 years old, and a boy who could ride a horse really fast. And he was just a boy like Susan's age.
And
Susan's age, and almost Johnny's age. And I thought it would be fun for them to think about Grandpa riding this horse and how happy Grandpa was when his father said, this horse is going to be yours. Okay.
And so
What was her name?
I had been reading a book called The Little Shepherd of Kingdom Come. And in that book is a story. It's a story about a young boy, and as he grew up and went through 18 and went to the war during the Civil War. And as he grew up, he bought a horse at a sale for $5, an old mare. And she was with foal, and no one else.
You know what that means? She was with foal.
She was carrying a little baby colt.
She was going to have a colt.
Uh-huh. And he had bought this horse because he'd gone to the auction to buy a horse, and he only had $5. And every horse that came up, the auctioneer said, "What am I bidding?" He'd say $5. And of course, others would bid him up, and they'd get the horse. So finally, this old mare came up, and the owner was standing at the back, and he'd watched this boy bidding all the time for the horses. And so as soon as he said, the auctioneer said, "What am I bidding?" He said, $5. And the man said, "He's sold. She's sold," to the boy. The owner did. And everybody clapped. And so he took this horse home, and then later on she had a colt, and the colt grew up, and this is the horse that he had, and he called it, and they lived in Kentucky, and that's in the old days there was the North, and then there was the South, and the South was called Dixie. So he named his horse Dixie. And so I've been reading this story about this horse, and it was a very fast horse, because he in one of these stories, he had to go 27 miles in about 3 hours to get because he couldn't send a telegram because the telegraph wires had been cut. And so he had to get to somebody to save a boy's life who was going to be executed. And he had to get the message to not execute him to the general who was going to do the executing.
Mm-hmm.
And he had to get there, and he wrote Dixie, and that's what stimulated me to call my horse Dixie.
Oh.
And so Dixie was a favorite of mine, and I had her, I guess 6 or 7 or 8 years, and I rode her everywhere. I remember I'd keep her in overnight in the corral, in the barn, and I'd get up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and in the summertime, and ride her out in the pasture to round the horses up and bring them in, herd them in.
At 3 in the morning?
3 in the morning, so that we could get them in and fed and curried and harnessed and ready for breakfast, so that we could be out to work at 8 o'clock. And that was my job, was to get up in the morning and round the horses up and bring them in. And because we'd always feed them a little hay, and we'd feed them a little grain, and then we'd harness them and take them out to work at 8 o'clock.
That's neat.
How would you like that, Johnny, to get up or Susan, either one, to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning, go get on your horse?
I would love it.
Ride on your horse and then go out and round up the other horses to bring them in.
I love it.
I didn't have a saddle,
I would love it.
and so I would ride the horse bareback, and I just learned to grip with my knees, and just rode bareback, and we just go. I'd race the trail out there was kind of like this, It wasn't straight, and there was a rail trail. It was about 2.5 feet wide, and it was kind of worn down, so it was about 6 inches deep, and it had a lot of dust in it. And I'd ride that horse out there on a dead run. It was so much fun. And then I'd take her down the canyon, and at night we'd take all the horses down the canyon to water them, so we wouldn't have to use the water we had in the cistern.
Yeah.
And then I'd ride her back up. I'd walk down, coming back. I always rode her, and hang on to her mane so that I wouldn't slide off the back. I can tell you a story about when I was younger, when I fell off a horse coming up in the canyon. But I'll leave that another time. When I was too little to walk up, and Dad had put me on the back of a horse, and the horse. Well,
No, tell it. Go ahead. Yeah.
and that it was just one of the ordinary workhorses, but the road, the path up there was so steep, the horses had to kind of jump a little at a time, you know.
Mm-hmm.
They couldn't take one step at a time; it was too steep. And so, one time the horse made a jerk, jumped, and there was he just had a halter on it, and Dad was holding on to the halter. And when the horse jumped, he was afraid that he was going to get away, so he jerked his head. And that threw, I was on the back of the horse, hanging onto the mane, the horse's hair on his neck. And that threw the horse off balance. And he stepped off the trail with his front forefoot. And then he fell. And he fell right over, and I fell down. And there was a great big pine tree, about 2 or 3 feet in diameter. And I fell right down to the side of that, and the horse came right down and hit that tree. And I wasn't under the horse or in front of the tree. I was just to the side, so I didn't get, the horse didn't land on me. And then the horse got up, and Dad put me back up on the horse and walked to the side of me, and we came all the way back up again.
Wow.
How old were you when that happened?
I must have been just
3 or 4?
4 or 5 years old, something like that.
Oh, wow.
And but then when I had Dixie, the horses would oftentimes get out, and they would, and so I couldn't.
You mean on somebody else's farm?
They'd get out and they'd go on somebody else's farm. And one day they got out, and I went hunting for them and couldn't find them. And so I came back home, and as I was running along, I was running across, following the road in, which was, of course, just a dirt road. But it was plowed. It was a plowed field, but we were running. The horse was running, and there was hills, little hills like this across. And it was just after dark, just after the sun had gone down, before it got dark, it was dusk. And the tops of the hills would be warm. And then you'd go down into the valley, and it was only about 10 feet deeper, 10 feet down in the valley, and then it'd come up again. But it was cold, you'd feel it cool. And go over the top, it would be warm, and down it'd be cool, up it'd be warm, and go down it'd be cool. And I thought that was kind of neat, the way the weather, the air was different, just in that much distance.
Yeah.
But we were going along, and we finally came out of those little things like that, and she was running. I just was wanting to get home, so I had her going full speed, and it was just dusk, just almost dark, and something startled her. We were going along pretty level, and then we went down just a little bit of an incline, and then we went straight again into the house. It was I was about a quarter of a mile away from the house when we come to this little dip. And as we were going down there, she was just going full speed, and something startled her, and she jumped sideways, and I could feel myself falling, and so I just leaned down, and because I had my hands right on her neck, mane, running with her anyway, kind of holding on to the mane, and so when I felt myself falling, I just reached with my other hand and reached up around her neck and let my hand go down under her neck like this. And as I slid around, I brought my feet up over the top of her neck. So I was hanging with my feet around her neck and my hands around her neck, and between her head and her front feet on her neck. And when I got down in that position, of course, when I started to fall, I hollered whoa, and she just came right down to a stop, and I got off and jumped back on again and went on home.
Oh my goodness.
But that scared you.
It scared me. I was afraid I was going to get down to her hoofs if hit me. You know?
Yeah.
And so that was the reason I didn't want to fall. One of the reasons. The other reason was she was a tall horse, and I didn't want to fall on my arm and break an arm or something.
All the way down to the
I
ground.
just reflexly reached around like that And she and I were we loved each other so much that she wouldn't have hurt me for anything. And I didn't scare her when I did that.
Yeah.
She just stopped.
Wait, I know
That's
you.
neat.
You put your arms around her neck or something, but how?
And then he slid.
And her legs. In
Not
other
like
words,
this. Whoa! And then he put his legs on her neck.
he was
too.
down there with her, with his arms around her neck and
Up by
his
her
feet,
head.
and then his
Like they
feet
were
up around his
hugging.
neck too. Like he was hanging on her neck, see? And his feet-
Like there's her hair
in her
straight
back, and he was hanging on her
Yeah.
neck and neck.
See, here's the horse and the neck. And he's riding like this, and then he slid under and started holding like this, and then put his legs up there too.
Well, how did the horse stop?
When he said whoa, he kept
And-
going till he said whoa.
Yeah. And then you brought the.
That's what we say the horses when they stop is whoa.
Yeah.
Now, Dad, this wasn't the stepping horse.
No,
No.
That was later.
that was
Yeah,
after
way
we were,
after.
after we lived in Blackburn where Mary lived.
Yeah.
This was a regular racehorse. And she got
Where we-
she got older and eventually got pneumonia and died. And then we had Dad bought we were buying horses and selling them and stuff. He bought a couple of horses in the spring one time. One was a little mare. She's quite an older horse, but she was just small, wasn't a big horse. And she was going to have a colt. And so that was the next year after Dixie died. And so she went ahead and had her colt. And then it was a sorrel, kind of light brown, you know. And then it went in and grew up. And I used her and so I named her Dixie.
Mm.
And we would take her down in the wintertime. We'd take the horses down to winter in one of my uncle's fields, who had a farm down in the valley in St. Anthony.
Where it wasn't quite so bitter.
It wasn't so cold, and they could feed the horses, because the horses would have died up on the ranch with nothing to eat.
Oh, because you weren't at the ranch.
No, we were down to the ranch.
You were down. You were in school.
We went down to Rexburg and farmed
Right.
up there in the winter
And Grandpa was teaching and
Grandpa was
coaching.
teaching, right?
and coaching and stuff. So
Exactly.
and we had a barn with a couple of cows, and I kept the horse there with me in the wintertime. And then in the spring, it was my job to let the cows out, and we were there was a whole big area block that was just with only houses on one part, and the rest of it was just open. But it was grassy, and we'd let the cows go out and eat, but someone had to watch them. So I would let the cows go out, and then I'd bridle on Dixie and jump up on her back, and I'd go up where the cows were, and I'd just let her eat while the cows were eating, and I'd just lie on her back and think, you know. I'd lie on her back with my feet up, crossed over the back of her neck, and my hands out like this on her rump, on her hip area, you know. And I just put my head down on my shoulders and just think,
Enjoy.
enjoy it. Let the cattle eat, and let the cows eat. And after I'd been out with them for an hour and a half or so, then I'd go driving back to the shed and in the corral and put the horse away. And I did that all one summer. And in fact, I used that horse for years until after Dottie came, and I don't know if you ever saw that horse or not. But I was grown up and finishing high school when we got rid of the horses and got a tractor. And after that, we got a tractor to do the work. So we got rid of all the horses.
But it wasn't as much fun to ride the tractor as it was to ride the
No,
horse.
it wasn't near as much fun to ride the tractor as it was the horse. But that was one of the experiences I had that I've thought a lot about over the years as I've grown up. And that's the end of my story.
Cool.
And that's the end of our lesson.
But this is the story this is the race between Dixie and Dawn, D-A-W-N. You had to get there before daylight to get to them.
To save the boy.
Well, how long is that? Do you want to read that to us?
No, it's It's a full book.
No, I just mean that one little part.
Well, it's one chapter.
Who gets there first?
Yeah, it might be a little.
It's a little hard to
Does
do.
he make it?
And he
He made it.
gets there and saves the boy's life.
Who does? Dixie?
Dixie, he's the man that was riding Dixie. Got there in time to get the message to the general that the boy wasn't supposed to be executed.
Mom, did you ever get to ride horses when you were growing up?
Yes, I did, but I didn't have one of my own, and I didn't have a good one, and I didn't ride fast. I rode a little bit. I enjoyed the horses more after I was married and we had them in the field, you know. And I didn't ride around very much, but I rode some, and it was interesting. One of the major things that I remember is we got to ride old Mary. That was the horse's name, was Mary, and she was just a slow old workhorse. And one day, I was behind another girl. The other girl was steering. What do you do to a horse?
Double, you're riding double.
You were riding double.
Riding double.
And she had the reins.
And I had a big Mexican hat on. Do you know what the Mexican hat was?
Sombrero.
Sombrero. And it was hanging down my back with the thing around my neck. And we were riding along, and we came to a clothesline, and I said, "Don't go under the clothesline." But she did anyway, and the clothesline caught my sombrero and pulled us both off. Of course, pulled me off, and I pulled her off with me, trying to hang on. But we didn't get hurt. I don't remember even limping or anything like that afterwards. So we were in a soft spot on the ground somewhere.
I can remember, while you were talking about falling off a horse, it reminded me of another incident. We had a farmer next door to us by the name of Smith, the Grand Smith. And he had a son named Carl, who was about my age. And we weren't, and it was in the spring when they were plowing, and I used to ride my horse, Dixie, over to their place, and we'd fool around. Well, one day I rode over that way, and he was out with the hired men plowing. They had 3 plows with 3 sets of horses holding the plows, and he was just out there, and they were resting the horses, and he was talking with them on his horse. And I rode up, and I just started talking too, and I just kind of put my feet over the back of the horse and my hands on her shoulders, and we were just chatting and listening to the fellows talk, you know, and not doing anything. It was out in the plowed field, and there wasn't anything for the horse just standing there. One of the hired men came over to say, "I'd sure like to see that horse." Came over and took a look at her, and he knew what he was going to do all the time, but I didn't know what he was going to do. But he started fumbling around her head a little bit, and he undid the throat latch, and then he just slipped his hand up over the horse's ears underneath the bridle, and as he did that, he just lifted the bridle over her ears and let the bridle fall off. So there was the horse
With nothing to hold on to.
and I had to hold the bridle reins, and
The bridle was on the
the
ground.
bridle was on the ground, and at that time, then he took his hat, took it off, and slapped the horse to the side of the head as he yelled, "Get out of here," you know, or something like that. So,
Hi!
"Fight!" Whatever he did. He slapped her, and so of course, she jumped. Well, I just fell off and landed on both hands like that on the dirt. And I sprained both my wrists real bad. I didn't break them, I don't suppose.
Fortunately.
But we never did check him or anything, but I was so mad at him I could have killed him.
Well, why did you do that?
Just to be smart. Just to be honest.
Well,
I wonder why some people do things.
Yes.
right. Well,
I want to hear the story of where Grandpa got kicked,
Yeah.
and then can we close? Can I hear that story?
Yeah, but we've been a half hour.
I know. It's all right.
Okay.
Well, I got kicked twice.
You got kicked
Put that
twice.
down.
I got kicked twice. Once when I was quite young,
Like Johnny's age.
like Johnny's age, maybe 8.
Jesus.
And
Johnny's age.
I was up on the dry phone with Dad, and we were he was plowing, and we had a horse that was tied up in the barn. And he was tied up right, see, there's the door to the barn, and then there were several stalls, 15 stalls in a row. And he was in the first stall. And I thought I'd have some fun with him. So I got myself I got myself a switch, a long switch.
Do you know what a switch is, John? Do you know what a switch is? No? Let me tell you.
A switch was a little whip, a piece of willow tree, off a tree, was a switch, we call it, and we used to hit the horses with it when we wanted them to go faster, you know.
Yeah.
And instead of having a leather end or anything, just a plain stick, so it was long, about as far as some Susan. It was only so long, you know. But I thought I'd have some fun with that horse. So I stood behind the door frame. There wasn't any door on it. It was a big, for the horses to go in. It was wide open. It was about 6 feet wide. Well, there's a big 6 by 6 up here. And I was standing there, and of course the wall was here. And the horse was right inside, and I'd stand behind that, and I'd take that switch, and I'd reach up out of there, and I'd tickle the horse on his belly. And he'd raise his foot up and kick the horse fly him, see? He'd kick his foot up like that. And
So he was teasing the horse.
I was teasing him, making him kick. And he kicked up like that, and then when he finished, he'd kick up, and his foot would come back like this. And then he'd come back down, and I'd kick him. He'd raise his foot up and swing it and kick it. Kick that thing off his tummy, and then when he'd bring it back, he naturally would bring his foot back like that. And every time he'd kick, I just duck back behind there, and he'd keep a big 6 by 6 pole, and it wouldn't hurt me at all. And one time, I did that, and I didn't get away fast enough. And he kicked that thing all right, but his foot slipped off of that and hit me right on the hip, and just sent me sprawling. And it hurt like the dickens. And I went crying out to Dad in the field, told him that the horse had kicked me in. And he said, "How come he kicked you?" Then I had to tell him what I'd been doing.
Yeah.
And he said, "Well, that's a good lesson to you, isn't it?" And I said, "Yeah." But I was growing, and I had a cartilage growth plate on my hip that hadn't fused yet. And so it indented my hip. And I still have an indentation on my hip.
You want to feel it? Go and let Mary feel it.
Now you do?
Yeah.
I still have
An indentation on your
an
hip?
indentation on my hip.
Cool.
This is our egg. Now watch out, don't get.
Be careful.
Oh, you're
in
not in front.
Right there, right here,
Yeah.
from there to here. And it's supposed to be, it would normally just be one piece.
Normally be rounded across the
Like
top.
the other side.
He just dented it in.
Great. That's great. Well, I guess that's not so great, but.
That was one time I got kicked. Another time I was 11 years old,
Right.
and we had just bought, Dad had just bought a horse. It was wild, and he was a trained horse. He was a broken horse, but he wasn't gentle. He was a wild.
He'd been there.
He'd been
bumped. He had been beaten by his former owner
Not taking it.
and not taken care of, not loved. He'd been beaten. And so he was very skittish. Well, Dad said, and I was driving, we had harrows, 3 views of harrows, and we had 7 horses to pull them. So Dad said, "Why don't we put him on the line, and that way you can control him." We had two lines, one on each outside horse. The other horses were tied together with a strap between each one.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I finished, and it was noon,
And Daddy was driving that harrow with 7 horses.
When he was 11.
When I was 11. And he
And
was
I-
driving
so I-
horses with a big harrow behind him, and 11 head of horses on him.
And I unhooked the horses and brought them into the house for lunch, for nooning. And my mother was up in the house and looking out the kitchen window and cooking lunch for us. Dad was out in the field fixing fence. And I had all the horses in a row there, and I was putting up I put up the line. It was about 20 feet long, you see, and I'd reach back and make a loop here and make back and make a loop. And then when I got all of them together, I'd put them through a ring in the horse's hame.
Hold on to it.
On the part of the harness, and I'd put it up over the neck.
The collars.
The collar. The collar stood up like
Yeah.
that. And I'd put it through here and then up over there, and that'd hold the line so that it wouldn't fall on the ground. Well, and then I'd go in front and undo the horses between them, take their bridles off and put them over the hand, and they'd go ahead and drink, and then they would automatically go in the barn and eat that hay.
Yeah.
Well, as I was pulling up, he was on the left line, and as I was pulling that up, he could see me through his blinders on the bridle. I guess there was a space between the bridle and his face, and he could apparently see me out of the corner of his eye pulling that up, and he thought I was going to whip him, I guess, or beat him or something.
Because he was going like this.
And I'd reach him back and pulling my arm, pulling that up. And every time I'd bring it up, I'd have the leather rein in the hand. I'd pull it up.
Okay. So then,
Where did he kick?
you were doing this, and he looked out and reached up and
He
kicked
must
you.
have kicked me. Because Mother said she just looked out the window and saw him jump up with his hind feet, jump up the air and kick. And she saw him hit me in the face. He kicked me right here in the face, flush on, I guess. I was close enough to him that it probably, if I'd been farther away, he'd gotten a blow. But just, anyway, he knocked me down, and she said I just felt like I'd been shot. And I didn't even move.
Like your coals.
She thought I'd been killed. So she came running out, and my cousin Vinton was up on the farm with us at that time. And she told Vinton.
This isn't
Vinton,
Yeah.
Vincent here.
Yeah.
Oh.
She told him to run out and get Dad. And she picked me up and took me in the house, laid me on bed. I woke up about 6 or 7 o'clock at night. I was unconscious for about 6 hours. And I had my face all swollen up, and my mouth was been bleeding, and of course she'd taken care of it and all that. But she didn't break my jaw. It just hit me real hard and it cut me on the inside so much that it cut a little nerve and cut the muscle and it scarred right there. And that's why I have an uneven smile.
Could smile at Norris now for you.
You see, it isn't quite the same on this side. This side. Right there, it's still numb. Even now.
And he's got a dimple right there. You see that dimple, John? That's where the horse got it.
Wow.
That's where the scar was inside my mouth.
Yeah.
Someone's really looking up for you up there.
All
And
these years,
as a
I've
result-
never noticed that it has affected your smile at all.
And that,
All these years.
you see, sometimes it's also affected the muscle on that side a little bit. So if this turns down just a little bit more than this does,
Yeah, but
it's hardly noticeable.
hardly noticeable at all.
But at least
You're lucky it didn't kill you.
when they
Yeah.
sit on this side of me, they think I'm frowning. When I sit on this side of me, they think I'm smiling.
No. No.
When you talk about somebody that should be doing what you're saying, someone must have been looking after you.
That's right.
That's right. Grandpa said you're on the left and tell him, but he will not die an untimely death. And he just had one time right after another. When he should have died, when he was 2 years old, he had the flu,
Yes, of course.
But what I mean is, when you hear people talk about the terrible flu of 1918, Grandpa had that flu.
It killed 18 million people in the United States.
18 million people in the United States died of that flu.
It's amazing that they would die from the flu. Here, you get the flu and
Right.
you stay home for a few days and
Yeah, give you a shot.
give you a shot of penicillin and
But that's why they give flu shots, because that kills people in a day.
yeah,
But there was a real epidemic. all across the
influenza.
United States.
When the doctor came, because he was only 2 years old and he had this flu, and the doctor came and said to his dad, Clyde, this boy isn't going to make it. He's going to die. You take care of him the best you can, but know that you're going to lose him. And when the doctor left, he and his dad thought, no, we aren't. And so he called the bishop, and the bishop came over, and Dad and Grandpa and the bishop administered to Daddy, to Grandpa, and he got better. He was only 2 years old. And then when he was kicked in the side, if he'd been kicked right in the stomach, that probably would have killed him. When he was kicked in the face, if he'd been kicked up here, that probably would have killed him. And so he's had just one time right after another.
I came down on an airplane.
He came down in an airplane without any landing gear, and the landing gear wouldn't come down. He was hit by a train in a car. Just one thing right after another like this could have killed him.
And one time when I was asleep, Grandma had a little discussion with me and was mad at me.
Oh, go
And
on.
she came in and hit me on the head with a bat.
Oh, go on.
That would have killed me.
Oh, go on. Johnny knows I wouldn't do that.
Well, thank you for sharing those stories with us tonight.